Hello and welcome! My name is Meepolis, they, he, she, and today we are looking at and talking about the queer comics anthology Juicy Mother Celebration, edited by Jennifer Camper, published by Softcall Press in 2004. Content notes for swearing, self-identifying with words that can also be used as insults, substance use, sex, nudity, homophobia, racism, cousins dating, teenager/adult relationship, cheating, animal skeleton in art, dyke culture, and police violence. Looking first at the editor and then moving from entry to entry, Jennifer Camper was more recently featured in Menopause, a comic treatment from Graphic Medicine. Link in the cards to that review, although I didn't profile her there. So here we go, and according to her personal website, quote, Jennifer Camper is a cartoonist and graphic artist living in New York City. Her comics are often dark stories with sly humor, and they give voice to outsiders. Her work examines life from a perspective that is irreverent, female, queer, and mongrel, Lebanese American. She often explores gender, race, class, and politics, as well as sexuality, mermaids, and robots. She's also a cartoon editor, a teacher, and the creator of 3 Queers and Comics Conference. Her books include Rude Girls and Dangerous Women, a collection of her cartoons, and Sub Girls, a graphic novella featuring the adventures of 3 women living in abandoned subway tunnels. She also edited 2 Juicy Mother comics anthologies. Her cartoons and illustrations have appeared in numerous publications and have exhibited internationally. End quote. Keywords that came to mind reading this anthology: underdog, outsider, coming of age, best we could do, and chosen family. The synopsis over on Goodreads is, quote, Juicy Mother is a cartoon anthology with work by and about queers, women, and people of color. The collection includes comics about an older butch dyke and her Lolita, an African-American gay man coming of age, an Arab Muslim dyke searching for her identity, 2 big hairy men getting married, a cynical Latina teen encountering aliens, and a wild cartoon jam. In a genre especially known for being dominated by straight white men, Juicy Mother is an alternative to alternative comics. The collection places emphasis on the voices least represented in the comic world. As such, stories within are exceptionally exuberant and carefree. They are a celebration, end quote. Flipping through each story, first we have Must Be Love by Diane DeMassa, described on Wikipedia as, quote, born 1959, is an American feminist artist noted as creator of the alternative comic cartoon character Hothead Paisan, homicidal lesbian terrorist, whose wild antics have been described as rage therapy for the marginalized. DeMassa is also active in oil painting and street art, end quote. The story, entitled Must Be Love, is all about the end of the millennium vibes and a bit of a chaotic churn of relationships starting and ending. Next we have Dollface, with art by Robert Kirby and words by Stephen Winter, a slice-of-life story about being young, gay, and black. Clicking through to Winter's website, quote, Stephen Winter is an award-winning filmmaker, writer, and artist. His Afrofuturist satire podcast series Adventures in New America was called The Best New Social Thriller by the New York Times, end quote. I actually follow Robert Kirby, aka Rob Kirby, on Goodreads and have read some of his own anthologies before. The one that is currently still live is Book of Boy Trouble, which as usual did not actually profile him. Clicking through to his profile on Wikipedia, quote, Robert Kirby is an American cartoonist known for his long-running syndicated comic Curbside, which ran in the gay and alternative presses from 1991 to 2008, and other works focusing on queer characters and community, including Strange Looking, Exile, Boy Trouble, 3, and Queer. Born in Detroit, Michigan in September 1962, he lived in Manhattan, New York City, New York for a while, during which he worked on Curbside Boys, the New York years. He attended the University of Minnesota. Kirby began publishing comics with Strange Looking Exile, a zine publisher, in the early 1990s, and grew popular through his long-running comic Curbside Boys. Kirby was married in October 2013 after same-sex marriage was legalized in Minnesota in May of that same year. He and his spouse, John, live in St. Paul, Minnesota. End quote. Story number 3, incidentally, also 3 pages, is Wandering Hands by Ariel Schrag, a very minimalist about people sleeping in close quarters. It may be tied to Schrag's longer work, Adam? Clicking over to her Wikipedia page, Ariel Schrag, quote, is an American cartoonist and television writer who achieved critical recognition at an early age for her autobiographical comics. Her novel Adam provoked controversy with its theme of a heterosexual teenage boy becoming drawn into the LGBTQ community of New York. Schrag accepts the label of dyke comic book artist, end quote. Next, we have a 2-pager by Alison Bechdel, pretty thoroughly profiled in my review of her autobio comic, The Secret to Superhuman Strength. Fairly self-explanatory, this short, what I know now about being an oppressed minority cartoonist, is some of Bechdel's thoughts on coming up as a lesbian cartoonist. Then there's what most of my peers over on the illustrious Goodreads feel is perhaps the low point of this collection, The Italian Cousin by Serena Pillai, not dissimilar from Blue is the Warmest Color. I'll never be thrilled to read about adult queer people cheating on their partners with teenagers. So F grade from me. Flipping to the back of the book, Serena Pillai Serpilla was, quote, born in November 1960, Scorpio. I'm a teacher in a state school in Cagliari, Sardinia, Italy. Very interested in art. I am a supporter of the oppressed and the exploited, animals included. I passionately love women, as you can see in my comic. This work was originally intended as a gift to all women, and that's why it was first published on the internet as free download material. Special thanks for the translation in English to Sally Davies, end quote. The 6th entry, on the other hand, appears to be just a 1-pager by famed gay cartoonist Howard Cruz that's literally about his aunt, her typewriters, and her writing ambitions. Very wholesome. You can find out more about Cruz via my review of The Complete Wendell. Next we have Chicken Head Love by Leanne Franson, a slice of life about an arts and crafts self-described by dyke. I apparently profiled Leanne Franson in my review of Anything That Loves, comic anthology edited by Charles Zan Christensen, which includes another one of her Leanne stories. Entry number 8 is another fairly short and self-explanatory. This time it's titled Sonnet 63 by Michael Fahy, words by William Shakespeare. An interesting mashup from another creative featured in Book of Boy Trouble. According to the back of the book, Mr. Fahy is from Philadelphia, and Sonnet 63 was inspired by Linda Barry's All the All. Next, we have an autobiographical comic from editor Jennifer Camper entitled Ramadan, a slice of life of being a lesbian Muslim. Camper gave herself a lot of space to really explore the nuance of her intersectional identity, and I really appreciated it. Can't take this sort of vulnerability for granted. The 9th story is You Must Not Read Gabriel Garcia Marquez After the Breakup by Joan Hilty, a very short guide to breaking up. Clicking back over to Wikipedia, quote, Joan Hilty, born December 27, 1966, is an American cartoonist, educator, and comic book editor. She was a senior editor for mainstream publisher DC Comics and currently works for Nickelodeon as editorial director for graphic novels, comics, and legacy properties. Hilty works independently as both a writer, artist, and editor, end quote. Then we have Teddy Bear's Wedding by Rupert Triptow, a fairly cute exploration of the stereotypes, including paper dolls, of gay marriage before it was legalized, although I'm sure I'm missing at least a few of the references. His Wikipedia page is, quote, Robert Triptow, born May 10, 1952 in Salt Lake City, Utah, is an American writer and artist. He is also known for creating gay and bisexual themed comics and for editing gay comics in the 1980s, and he was identified by underground comics pioneer Lee Mars as, quote, the last of the underground cartoonists, end quote, end quote. Next we have The Party, a cartoon jam by, in order of appearance, Jennifer Camper, Howard Cruz, Diane DeMassa, Rupert Kinnard, Alison Bechdel, and Ivan Veleze Jr., where each frame is written by the next cartoonist in an ongoing rotation, with each rotation bringing people closer together as all hell breaks loose. Clicking over to his profile on Wikipedia, quote, Rupert Kinnard was born in Chicago in 1954 and spent his early years living on the West Side. In 1972, teenage Kinnard noticed that not only were all of his favorite superheroes white, but even the comics characters he created himself didn't reflect his racial identity, and responded by creating Superbad, a black militant figure inspired by boxer/activist Muhammad Ali. In 1976, he enrolled at Cornell College in Iowa. In 1977, he created Brown Bomber, a less aggressive African-American character modeled after boxer Joe Louis, who was also known by that nickname. The character was featured in a comic strip published weekly in the Cornelian, the college newspaper. After the character became popular on campus, Kinnard wrote a strip which identified the character as gay. He graduated from college in 1979 and moved to Portland, Oregon, where he began working for alternative newspaper Willamette Week, eventually as associate art director. In 1983, he co-founded Just Out, Oregon's first LGBT publication. In 1984, he created the lesbian African-American character Diva Touche Flambe and featured her with Brown Bomber in the strip Cathartic Comics. He then became the first African-American to serve on the board of the Portland Town Council, the state's first LGBT organization, and helped to establish the Diversity Alliance, a multicultural LGBT group. End quote. Entering the final stretch, Story 12 is another one-pager, Home for the Holidays by Ariel Schrag. Then we have Lolita versus the Space Invaders by Ivan Veleze Jr., the story of a young woman and her troubles in school that takes a bit of a random turn. Veleze's Wikipedia entry goes a little like this. Quote, an openly gay Latino American cartoonist, writer, museum educator, and teacher artist known for creating the groundbreaking comic book series Tales of the Closet and for his work with the DC Comics imprint Milestone Media and with Marvel Comics, believing that Americans, including younger people, were a growing market for more characters and superheroes of color. Veleze used his work to advocate for LGBT characters, including young members of that community. Veleze acknowledges that the mid-80s were the time of the multicultural initiative and the onset of the AIDS crisis, which he sought to address through frank exploration of issues facing gay and transgender teens in his educational and LGBTQ awareness project Tales of the Closet. End quote. And last but certainly not least, we have Look Look, art by G.B. Jones, words by Jennifer Camper, an adult fun with Dick and Jane sort of story. Clicking over to Wikipedia, quote, G.B. Jones, born 1965, is a Canadian artist, filmmaker, musician, and publisher of zines. She is best known for producing JDs and her Tom Girls drawings, end quote. As always, anthologies can be a bit of a crapshoot. That said, besides the one very low point, I think this collection is overall pretty interesting. It certainly felt like going through and profiling all the creators, we hit more diverse points than is always the case with these queer comic anthologies. Bye y'all, keep reading, and organized end capitalist oppression. And as always, Literally Graphic is created on land that should be given back to the traditional landholders, which in this case is, to my knowledge, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, Anishinaabe people, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat Nation.